I'm Kevin Clark, and this is Dead Wax True Crime, another true crime podcast. You are listening to Series 1, the June Larimore Project, and this is episode number 2, The Investigation.
All right, but she was stabbed 134 times. Okay, what was the time of death, you know? Okay, I'm sorry.
What you're listening to now is audio from a cassette tape recording of a phone call between Blytheville Police Chief Larry Christie and Dr. Fahmy Malik, the medical examiner of the state of Arkansas.
Mm-hmm.
This phone call was made at 4:08 p.m. on January 12th, 1990.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned in episode 1, I have about 20 cassette tapes with interviews conducted by the Blytheville Police Department during this investigation.
Okay, good.
This is the only tape without a proper timestamp, either on the tape or on the evidence form.
Okay.
Some say that this tape of this phone call, again apparently made on January 12th of 1990, could have played a major role in this case early.
Good.
But it disappeared for 7 years. Much more on that to come. Now, when we last left our narrative, it was still January 11th, 1990, a Thursday. June Larimore's sister Jane had just discovered June's body on the bedroom floor of the Larimore home in my hometown of Blytheville, Arkansas. June had been stabbed 134 times. The phone cord in June's bedroom had been ripped from the wall. Jane had to run to neighbors for help. They called emergency services, and then Jane called June's husband, Greg Larimore, who was at work at his family's agricultural business, Larimore Crop Supply.
This is a taped interview conducted in the office of the Chief of Police. Today's date is January the 17th, 1990. The subject of this interview is Miss Jane Fletcher. Miss Fletcher, I understand that you were the one that found your sister in the house. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
As you heard Chief Christie say, this is June's sister Jane, as she sounded in 1990, just 6 days after she discovered her sister's body. One day after this taped interview on January 18th, 1990, a Thursday, and exactly 1 week since June's body was found, police make an arrest. And while I haven't explicitly told you who they arrested, I bet you know. Because I think this tape is important for you to hear, we're going to backtrack just a little. We have already heard Jane tell this part of the story, but we heard Jane from 2024. This is Jane from 1990. Here, Chief Christie begins the interview with a definite focus.
Okay, I want you to go from the beginning. Tell me exactly what happened that day in your conversation with Greg Larimore. I believe you contacted him by telephone, right?
Beginning with my conversation.
From the time that you got there, and then when you left the house to call him.
To the best of my recollection, I got her to get the phone number for the crop supply. I told her it was under Larimore Crop Supply. I told her, I said, I'm okay. I just need to call her husband. I'm okay. And she dialed the number for me. I had the phone. And the answer on the phone was Larimore Crop Supply. And I could tell that it was Greg's voice. And I said, Greg? He said, yes. I said, this is Jane. And he said, yeah. And I said, listen. I said, I came to get Jim for lunch, and something's bad wrong. I don't know, Greg. It looks like somebody's been in the house. And you need to get home, Greg, right now. And it seems like he said, where's June? And I said, she's in the house. I said, just get home right now, Greg. I need you to get home. And he said, I'm on my way.
Okay,
and hung up the phone.
Okay, when he arrived in his truck, is that correct?
Right.
What was your conversation with Greg when he arrived there?
Oh boy, that's a difficult one. I'm trying. I'll try. I had been back in the house hoping maybe to revive her. That at that point is when I got a real close look at her. And I still believe that something had attacked her or something. It didn't register to me that it was stab wounds. And I remember running back outside at the sound of sirens that I'd heard in the distance when I went back in the house. And then when I ran out of the house, I think they were pulling up. But it seemed like several police cars and all had arrived just prior to Greg pulling up. I want to say that somebody else had already gone in the house before he got there. I was standing out there waiting for him to come up. He sped up in his company truck. He got out of the truck. I don't remember if he shut the door or what. He ran straight towards me. There were people standing everywhere. And it was like I was holding my arms out for him to help me, and he ran towards me. He grabbed a hold of me and hugged me, and I just held tight. And I think that's when I kind of broke down and started screaming. I don't know what I said. It seems like I said, "Somebody's got her, Greg. Something's wrong. Somebody's got her." And we were at one point hugging, and then it seems like, I don't know how, but we got to another point on the sidewalk or in the yard. I think it was on his driveway. That I was hugging him. I was facing kind of towards the house. He was facing somewhat away from the house. It seems like I remember Greg, saying, why would somebody do that? And I said, I want to say I said something like, "It's bad, Greg. She's so cold." And he said something to the police officer. And I remember that exactly. He said, that was standing behind me, he said, "You mean to tell me my wife's just fucking dead?" That's it. My wife's just fucking dead. And I do remember then saying, "Yes, Greg, I'm so sorry, but yes."
That was his extent of the conversation.
Him saying something like, "Okay, Jane, okay, there was people talking to him, people talking to me. We were kind of separated, pulled apart. And then at another point, he started to go into the house. And I remember grabbing him and saying, "No, Greg, don't go in there. You don't want to go in there." And he said, "Jane, I got to. It's something I got to do." And I said, "No, Greg, you don't. Please don't go in there. You'll remember like that for the rest of your life. Don't go in there." And he started walking towards the house, and I said, "Well, let me go with you." And he said, "All right." And he got towards the door, the back door, into the carport, and that's when a police officer or somebody stopped him and said, "Mr. Larimore, I need you to come talk to me for a minute, please. And I need you to come over here." And Greg just kind of looked at me like, what I do. And it seems like I just kind of said, like, "Yeah, that's a good idea." At that point, I felt relief that he wasn't going in there. And that I wasn't going back in there.
And that was about it?
That was about it.
This is a compelling piece of tape. Letting you hear it now, mostly in its entirety, gets us ahead of where I plan to be narrative-wise, but I think it's important for you to hear how Jane characterized this scene when it was still very fresh in her mind. There are some important distinctions in how Jane perceived Greg versus how police perceived him.
He sped up in his company truck. He ran straight towards me, and it was like I was holding my arms out for him to help me, and he ran towards me. He grabbed a hold of me and hugged me, and I just held tight.
He sped up. He ran. He grabbed. Hugged. That is how Jane described the scene when it was still fresh in her mind, just 6 days after it happened. We will come back to that, I promise, but for now, let's backtrack just a few minutes to the point where Jane hangs up the phone after calling Greg at the Skelton's home. She rushes back to the crime scene, hoping against hope that there was something she could do. Here is Jane from our interview in 2024.
I go running back to the house thinking, I'm going to go do CPR.
But once inside the Larimore home, even the simplest tasks seemed impossible.
I go back in. There's a fan with a light. I try the light switch. The light switch doesn't come on. The switch doesn't work. And so I step around her, and I'm doing like this and trying to get the light to come on. Apparently, I've gotten that turned off now because I'm pulling on both of those, and it's not working. And so then I go back and I flip that switch, and the light doesn't come on. And I see the one hanging over there, and I think, okay, I'll just use that. The light doesn't come on. I'm thinking, okay, it's all right. I don't need light.
This absurd dance, a light switch on the wall and pull cords of a ceiling fan, a universal moment of mild frustration. But in this moment, for Jane, this is a singular experience. So many options, yet the light refused. On a day of just so much, this lack of illumination, a small blessing, perhaps. Then another universal moment, this one of tenderness and concern. The back of Jane's hand to her sister's forehead. A gesture of care and love that we've all done to check for fever in a loved one.
She is ice cold.
You put your hand on her forehead?
She's not cold, she's ice cold.
Jane flees again, her soul absorbing the impossible.
And I start going, then it starts to, and I think I gotta get out of here. So I go to step out, and I get to the back door. Somebody knocks, and I go and I open it, and it's a police officer.
According to police reports, the time is now 11:41 a.m. There is a police officer at the front door. That is Sergeant James Branham with the Blytheville Police Department. Jane flees to the side door, the one under the carport. Lieutenant John Blair of the Blytheville Police Department is there. James Branham died in 2022 at the age of 64. Lieutenant Blair, at the side door, was the first officer to see Jane.
This call will be recorded.
He is in his mid-70s now and retired from police work.
We did get disconnected. Just call me back at this number.
Okay, will do. How's your morning going?
It's just going.
Lieutenant Blair was the first police officer I reached out to for this project, only because in the chronological narrative, he was the next character. Jane literally ran into his arms. Well, so January 11th, 1990 in Blytheville. What do you remember about that day?
Just about everything I can.
Lieutenant Blair in January of 1990 was the head of the patrol division at the Blytheville Police Department. He was at his office when the call came in.
Sergeant Branham went to the front door. I went up through the driveway to the back door.
Somebody knocks, and I go and I open it, and it's a police officer.
Jane came to the door. She was very distraught. And so I immediately, I went in through the dining room kitchen area there. Went to the hallway. I could see the victim laying on the floor, and I knew then that what we had is a murder. My job then was to get Jane out of the house without disturbing any type of evidence that might be around there, and then secure the area and get the right people down there to start doing the investigation.
What did you notice about the house?
When you're in a place like that, everything talks to you. The first thing I noticed about the house was how clean it was. It looked like somebody had just cleaned it, The carpet in the living room, for instance, was the type of carpet, if you stepped on it, you would leave a footprint. There was no footprints in it. There was a vacuum cleaner out. The radio system was on loud. So I'm looking for anything, any opening windows. What I did notice was that there was no dirty clothes, towels, things that it would took to clean up. On the kitchen sink, there was no dish rag that they cleaned dishes with.
The house was, by all accounts, very clean, save for the obvious disturbance in the bedroom. Now, by this time, the cul-de-sac was abuzz with activity. More police show up. Chief of Police Larry Christie is at the scene. So is Captain Ralph Hill. Chief Christie died in 2020. He assigned Captain Hill as the lead investigator. Captain Hill was a bit difficult to locate. I have been using a paid service to help me locate folks who have moved away, and it has been pretty good. For Captain Hill, it gave me 8 phone numbers, none of which were accurate. It gave me 3 email addresses, 2 of which were dead. I never received a reply from the third. It gave me 1 physical address.
Turn left onto Arkansas 1 North Stadium Boulevard.
And that meant 4 hours of driving on a gamble that it was correct. There's a Seductions to my right, a Fireworks World also to my immediate right. Ready to party, Arkansas, so says the sign on the billboard. Mr. T's at Riverside Liquor Store. I guess this is where the college kids come to get their booze and fireworks. It is important to note here that the state of Arkansas is a one-party consent state when it comes to recording conversations. This means it is legal to record a conversation inside the state, whether in person or on the phone, as long as at least one person involved in the conversation has consented to the recording. And that would be me. Dog barking. Hi. Hey, sir. I'm looking for Mr. Ralph Hill, former chief of police for Blytheville Police Department. Yes. Are you here? Yeah. My name's Kevin Clark, and for the past few months, I've been working on a podcast that has to do with the June Larimore murder. Yeah. And so Captain Hill answered the door. I knew him as soon as I saw him. His hair was whiter now than in the photo that I have. His home is beautifully kept and very modest, located in a quiet cul-de-sac in a town where a lot of Blytheville expats have settled. I want to take a brief detour and talk about that expat phenomenon. In 1990, when June was murdered, the population of Blytheville was around 23,000. Today, estimates put it at around 13,000. That is a significant drop, and there are several reasons for that, only one of which was a significant increase in crime. This subject deserves its own podcast, but as you listen to this podcast, I want you to realize that, to me, there was a Blytheville before June was murdered. It had fishing rodeos and train rides in the park, American Legion baseball, and a vibrant downtown. And then there was a Blytheville after. I covered this a bit in a short film I made for Arkansas PBS. I'll link that on my website if you're interested. That's deadwaxtruecrime.com. Hi. Well, hey, bud. So back to Captain Hill's front porch. He invited me in and introduced me to his wife, who was working in the kitchen, and his dog, Jack. Jack is a good boy who loves company.
Well, hey, buddy.
Captain Hill eventually rose to the office of Chief of Police in the Blytheville Police Department. But I'll continue to refer to him and everyone else in this podcast by the title they held in 1990, just to keep it simple. Captain Hill and I spoke for about a half an hour, and I felt when I left he was inclined to sit down with us for an interview.
I will email you a link to, it'll be a YouTube link. There's no,
Well, I had some hard questions, and I didn't want to blindside him, so I chose to send him a list of prompts that I had prepared, and I highlighted the ones that, in my view, were going to be difficult questions for him to answer. The following day, I got this email. Mr. Clark, I have reviewed the information you sent, and I just do not want to try and discuss this matter. A lot of years have transpired, and there is a lot I don't clearly remember anymore. I will destroy the information that you sent me. I am sorry, Ralph Hill. That was a big loss, storytelling-wise. Did I mess up sending him the prompts? Maybe, but we move on. Now back to the narrative. The cul-de-sac was busy. City officials, onlookers, police, EMTs, all converging. It's chaotic. Now, we heard earlier Jane from 1990 tell us of her impressions when June's husband, Greg Larimore, arrived at the scene.
He sped up, he ran, he grabbed a hold of me and hugged me. He said, "You mean to tell me my wife's just fucking dead?" That's it. My wife's just fucking dead.
Let's hear how Lieutenant Blair saw it.
And about this time, somebody said that Larimore had arrived at the house. When I looked out the door and saw him with Sergeant Branham, and of course, Branham reported it back to me too, that his demeanor was very suspicious. It looked to me like he was paying attention more to, how you say this, things being removed from his house, not the fact that the wife was laying in there dead. Are they going to find that piece of evidence in there that puts me in there? It's what I thought he was thinking.
Lieutenant Blair says Greg Larimore's demeanor was suspicious. In Sergeant Branham's supplement filed on January 30th, 1990, 19 days later, Branham wrote, "After arriving at a murder scene and securing the premises of 831 East Walnut, the undersigned had occasion to speak with the deceased's husband. The following is an account of observations. Upon Mr. Larimore's arrival, I noticed that he drove up to the scene as if he was routinely coming home.
He sped up in his company truck.
After he saw several police vehicles and an ambulance at his residence, he casually walked toward the residence from approximately 2 houses down.
He ran straight towards me.
Upon reaching the drive of the residence, I approached him and advised him he could go no further, and his sister-in-law, Jane Fletcher, ran up to him crying and asking who could do this to her sister. She was sweet. At this time, I attempted to advise Mr. Larimore of the situation, and he asked, 'Are you trying to tell me my wife is dead?' At this point, I advised him that she was in fact dead, and he said, 'My fucking wife.'
He said, 'You mean to tell me my wife's just fucking dead?'
Then repeated that statement 1 or 2 more times while he was holding his sister-in-law. Mr. Larimore, at this time, leaned against a patrol car and said nothing else. At no time did I see any reaction which I would consider normal under these circumstances. I did not see crying, a look of disbelief, or shock. Mr. Larimore made a vague attempt to go inside the residence, but was turned around easily by a verbal command." Again, that was Sergeant Branham's perception of Greg Larimore as he arrived at the scene. Sergeant Gary Byes, who was also there and took Greg Larimore to the police department, wrote, "Mr. Larimore showed no great emotion to the death of his wife, never made an attempt to enter the residence, and did not inquire as to whether he could see his wife until he was in a police car and was leaving the scene." I have yet to read anything by police that contradicts these types of statements about Greg's demeanor at the scene. The only thing that comes close to a contradiction is Jane from 1990. But then I was contacted by a listener. Remember in the last episode, we introduced Kathy, the daughter of the Skeltons, the older couple who came to Jane's aid as she was screaming for help. Kathy's husband, Terry, arrived at the cul-de-sac just after Greg Larimore did. Here's Terry Beavers.
I was standing there in the next door neighbor's yard, and when they opened up the back door, Greg tried to fight him to get into the house, and they were kind of restraining him. They were trying to hold him back, which at the time I thought was a normal situation, because I'm sure they didn't want him running in there and losing it, seeing his wife. At the time, that's what I was thinking. But then when I saw the testimony later on in the trial that they did report that they said he had no reaction to it, I'm sorry, that ain't what happened that day anyway. But they had to restrain him from running in the house.
So that is a stronger contradiction to the official narrative, right? And in spite of Terry being at the scene, and in spite of Mr. and Mrs. Skelton coming to Jane's aid, police never spoke to any of them. It was Detective Mike Marshall who was tasked with the shoe leather investigation. He was the one knocking on doors. He interviewed a number of people in the neighborhood: Barbara and S.D. Bray, Richard Watson, Daniel Mann, Mildred Mann, Donna Banks, Evelyn Hayes, Leslie Collard, Jeremy Watson, Wayne Lewis, Bill Yarbrough, Lavina McGill, Max Briley, Tim Estes, John Duncan, Mark Dawson, and Sue Lawrence. Those are all names from the cul-de-sac or so very close. So it is odd that the Skeltons weren't interviewed. And Terry was not interviewed, especially with them having such a prominent role in the immediate aftermath. Greg Larimore was at the crime scene for about 20 minutes before he was taken away in an unmarked police car to the Blytheville Police Department. Once there, at 12:02 p.m., Larimore is read his Miranda rights and he signs a rights waiver. And then he is interviewed by Captain Hill and Sergeant Gary Byes. The tape of that interview.
Following is going to be a tape statement. This will be conducted at the Blytheville Police Department. Today's date is 1/12/90. The time at the beginning of this interview is 3.
It doesn't exist. I have 2 signed Miranda rights waivers from Greg Larimore, but no audio recording of an interview at all. For a long time, I thought, well, obviously I don't have everything, and those 2 tapes are just not in the collection that I've acquired. But no, in reading the testimony from the trials, you can learn that none of the police interactions with Greg Larimore were recorded. The silence of that unrecorded interview, the blank space where Greg Larimore's first words, his initial reactions, should have been etched. That silence now hums with a quiet, unsettling nothing. We search for patterns, for meaning in the everyday, but sometimes the most profound truths reside in the voids, the absences, the things that aren't there that should be there. So as we are coming to a close of episode 2, it is just after noon on January 11th, 1990. Only about a half hour has passed since Jane first found her sister June. June's husband Greg is at the police department being interviewed. The Larimore home is now a crime scene, crawling with detectives as the radio continues to play. Here's actual sound from that day.
Get rid of stress, do better in your career, lose weight, stop smoking, and more. All this is for you.
It should also be noted that there is cash in the victim's purse located up there.
Your list.
end of the couch sofa located in the living room.
Books and tapes, goal setting, diet books, plus materials on health and healing. UH has everything you need, and now 2 locations to help you. 3856 Park and their brand new expanded location in the South
Cigarettes, butts number 3, an ashtray located also at the end of the couch in the living room with the brand of Durell on each cigarette. Also, same brand name cigarettes in the victim's purse.
That help you help yourself.
I'm gonna call Walmart, find out what they should get off last night. That was a coat rack being moved at this time, laying on the floor between the living room and the kitchen area.
And tomorrow, sunny and cool, high near 45 as we head into the weekend. Sunshine, 59 right now. From your official Tennessee lottery.
Everything in the living room throughout the house seemed to be intact.
Police officers accustomed to the raw, unfiltered chaos of human tragedy found something in the Larimore home. It wasn't just the horror of June's brutal end, but a scene that felt rearranged and staged. I've described for you the position June's body was found. Her right arm over her head, her toes pointed. Captain Hill looked at that same scene and saw it in a way that I didn't. He said June was posed like a ballerina. When I first read those words by Captain Hill, the breath left my body. I had looked at those crime scene photos intensely. I had watched the crime scene video nearly frame by frame. Never did the thought of a ballerina pose strike me. But yes, her toes pointed, her right hand curled gracefully over her head, and her left hand curled just over her belly button. June was left in a rough estimation of the 4th position ballet pose. This seemingly staged scene, the ballerina wiped down and cleaned of blood, the music blaring from the radio, an untouched wedding cake tier on the stove in the kitchen, apparently a part of the celebration days earlier for the couple's first anniversary. The Larimore home was clean, but the narrative toward truth, not so much. Lieutenant Blair, among others, sensed it, a calculated dissonance, a scene not kosher.
The house just does not look kosher. Just something about it that made you want to ask another question.
A scene that left everyone who witnessed it scarred.
I can tell you this, after you first contacted me, I didn't sleep for 2 weeks.
When I first contacted Lieutenant Blair, he didn't want to talk. I have a rule when I hear no. I need to be told no 3 times before I stop asking for an interview. I told that to Lieutenant Blair and asked if I could send him some more information. I sent him the rough cut of episode 1, and in that episode, I mentioned my own family's tragedy and how the unsolved murder of my dad continues to haunt me. I don't know what changed Lieutenant Blair's mind, but I'm glad he decided to talk, and our conversation was about to take a turn.
You know, you were talking about your father, and what I have to say about that is take those bad memories and put them in a file, place them in the back of your mind. And in the front of that file, start putting the files of the good things that you can remember. And that helps a whole lot, is to keep them in that file and try not to open that file if you don't have to. 2 different kinds of memories, good and bad. This was a bad memory. So I have to fill up my mind with so many good memories. And I'm lucky enough that, over 30 years, that I've had a lot of good memories. It's spend your time living what you can. And don't let one instant kill that love and override that love. Hang in there with it. Get those good memories of your father, of your family, of your sister. Get those memories. Remember that time you and your sister were sitting there eating an ice cream cone together and laughing. Little things like that. Bring it back just like it's a movie to you. You're sitting there, you know exactly what she's wearing, you know what you're wearing. You can taste the ice cream. It's just a wonderful thing about the human mind. You're not blocking the bad stuff out. The bad stuff will seep through. But keep those good memories up there ahead of everything.
Yes, sir. Powerful advice from a man who has seen too much.
4554321.
No one who walked through the Larimore home on January 11, 1990 was left unaltered. And in the hushed early hours of the investigation, as the official narrative began to form, a conversation captured and then forgotten, that lost tape that reveals the raw, unvarnished sentiment of those tasked with finding justice. The tape we started this episode with, the one that disappeared for 7 years.
Right, but she was stabbed 134 times. Okay, what was the time of death, you know? Okay, I'm sorry.
Like I said earlier, this is one side of a phone call between Chief Larry Christie, that is whose voice you hear, and Dr. Fahmy Malik of the Arkansas State Crime Lab.
Yeah, that was Captain Hill you talked to.
This tape was made at 4:08 p.m. on January 12, 1990, one day after June's body was found.
Okay.
And the same day that Dr. Malik completed the autopsy of June Larimore. It was not entered into evidence until July 11th, 1997, 7.5 years later. According to his report, Detective James Sanders put this tape into his tape recorder in the early morning hours of July 7th, 1997, a Monday.
Right.
He was looking for a blank tape to conduct an interview on an unrelated case. His report says he played the tape before recording over it and heard Chief Christie's voice.
Yeah.
He decided not to tape over it and placed it back in his drawer. 2 days later, he listened to it all the way through. Detective Sanders thought the tape was useless because it had only one side of the phone conversation. Regardless, on July 11th, 1997, a Friday, he wrote it into evidence. So this tape was not useless.
Yeah, I did hear about that case.
And back in January 1990, as it was tossed to the back of a desk drawer and forgotten, the investigation proceeded, and the noose around June's husband, Greg Larimore, tightened.
You can't beat that, can you? Huh? That was good, right on the money. You know?
This phone call had a main purpose: to get Dr. Malik's opinion on June's time of death. Greg Larimore was at work at 7 a.m. on January 11th, 1990, giving him an ironclad alibi if June's time of death was after 6 a.m. Here is Chief Christie getting the news he had hoped for. This call and the conversation he has with Captain Hill after he hangs up, along with many other factors, will eventually unravel everything.
Sure. But you would say, in your opinion, that she was murdered prior to 6 o'clock. Okay, doctor. Look, I'll get those photographs to you. Probably get them by tomorrow. Great. That's really great. We appreciate your cooperation, doctor. Thank you, doctor. Prior to 6 o'clock, Ralph.
Oh, shit.
He said he worked a case just like it, the one he told you about?
Uh-huh.
He said he got it within a half an hour. He said the same kind of case, you know, with the husband.
Half an hour is fine. So he said prior to 6, but did he give you a range there?
So if you can get a copy of those now.
Yeah, I've got a letter being typed up now.
And then we'll get them overnight mail?
I'll put them overnight mail.
Okay.
Outstanding. Doggone. Get the FBI to come through. We got the son of a bitch.
I think we got him. Hey, what that guy told me on the phone from Little Rock? He says, look at somebody close to her. He says, is she married? I said, yep. He said, that's what you look at first. That's him.
We'll get that copy of his report. I'll tell you what, if he can get that done.
How did Greg act today?
Oh, Greg still not upset. I mean, his eyes are red, and he got rubbing his eyes like he's trying to cry down there.
Son of a bitch.
That's the chief of police and the lead investigator speaking of the man they already saw with a grim finality as a son of a bitch. This was not just an investigation into a murder. It was an investigation already shadowed by a preconceived outcome, a trajectory set even before all the pieces were laid bare, where wealth and class would collide with public sentiment, creating a path winding deeper into the dead wax, where the echoes of unrecorded words, altered evidence, and lost or suppressed facts would relentlessly loop, driving the needle towards a conclusion that felt both inevitable and deeply, deeply unsettling. Next time on Dead Wax True Crime, Episode 3, the investigation continues. Secrets and rumors. The town reacts. And a voice from the shadows about a secret diary.
She kept a diary concerning an affair. That she kept it hidden from Greg, and that Greg did not know that she had it.
Information is given to police concerning one of their own.
June had told me that he was a police officer. He was a nice-looking guy, and he lived in Capri Apartments.
And police, with physical evidence scarce, continue to build a cage around that son of a bitch. Dead Wax True Crime is a production of Stories of the American South. It is researched, written, and edited by me, Kevin Clark. If you have information about what happened to June Larimore, please contact us at our website, deadwaxtruecrime.com. And if you want to hear more and see more, please consider subscribing to our Patreon account. Paid subscribers get early access to episodes as well as access to exclusive content in the form of weekly updates and our Friday document dumps of original police documents, photos, and video. Go to patreon.com/deadwaxtruecrime. And thank you for listening.